All India Radio presents Morning News. Good morning. I am Lalema Aneja Dang and with me is Sarabjit Kaur. The headlines. Udhav Takri resigns as Chief Minister of Maharashtra after Supreme Court refuses to stay today's floor test. Prime Minister Narendra Modi to take part in Udyami Bharat program in New Delhi this morning to launch several schemes to strengthen MSME sector. Isro to launch rocket Pslvc 53 carrying 3 Singapore satellites this evening. India successfully tests high-speed expendable aerial target Abhyas off Odisha coast. Annual Amarnath Yatra begins from both Pahalgam and Baltal routes in the Kashmir Valley amid tight security. UK announces 75 scholarships for Indian students to mark 75th year of India's independence. Indian boxers Simranjit Kaur and Anand Chopre enters quarterfinals of Iloda Cup in Kazakhstan. And in Wimbledon tennis, Andy Murray, Casper Ruud and Emma Raducanu crash out of the tournament. Maharashtra Chief Minister Udhav Takri has resigned ahead of today's trust vote in the State Assembly. The move comes after the Supreme Court refused to stay the floor test that was to take place today as directed by Maharashtra Governor Bhagat Singh Koshyari. Addressing the people of the state through Facebook Live last evening, the Shiv Sena chief said he would also resign from the Legislative Council of which he is the member. The Mahavikas Aghadi MVA government in Maharashtra was facing a political crisis after a revolt in the Shiv Sena party. Our correspondent has more on this.
Udhav Thackeray's resignation from the Chief Minister's post became imminent after the Supreme Court refused to stay the floor test that was supposed to be held today. Shiv Sena clearly lacked numbers in the Legislative Assembly after Eknath Shinde and a large chunk of MLAs rebelled. Soon after, the Legislative Council polls held on 20th of this month and left to Surat and to Guwahati thereon. Training guns at rebel MLAs, Udhav said that ordinary people rose to ranks in the party. He regretted by saying that there were only 4 ministers from the Shiv Sena in yesterday's cabinet meeting, the last one of the erstwhile MVA. After his address, Udhav drove down straight to Raj Bhavan with his sons Aditya, Tejas and other Sena leaders to complete the formality of handing over the resignation letter to Governor Bhagat Singh Koshyari. Soon after Udhav announced his resignation from the CM's post, there were scenes of jubilation in the BJP. BJP leaders were seen congratulating Devendra Fadnavis, who is most likely to become the new Chief Minister of Maharashtra. With numbers on his side, as Eknath Shinde-led group keen to join hands with the BJP, Fadnavis, with all possibilities, will be invited by the Governor to form the new government in Maharashtra soon. Kunal Shinde, AIR News, Mumbai.
Prime Minister Narendra Modi will participate in the Udyami Bharat program in New Delhi around 10:30 this morning. During the event, Mr. Modi will launch several schemes to strengthen the micro, small and medium enterprises MSME sector. The Prime Minister will unveil the Raising and Accelerating MSME Performance Scheme, capacity building of first-time MSME exporters scheme and new features of the Prime Minister's Employment Generation Program. More on this from our correspondent.
During the program, the Prime Minister will digitally transfer assistance to beneficiaries of Prime Minister's Employment Generation Program for 2022-23. Mr. Modi will announce results of MSME Idea Hackathon 2022 and distribute National MSME Awards. The Prime Minister will launch the RAM scheme with an outlay of around 6,000 crore rupees. It aims to scale up the implementation capacity and coverage of MSMEs in the states with impact enhancement of existing MSME schemes. Udyami Bharat is reflective of the continuous commitment of the government right from day one to work towards empowerment of MSMEs. Government has launched several initiatives from time to time like Mudra Yojana, Emergency Credit Line Guarantee Scheme and Scheme of Fund for Regeneration of Traditional Industries. Anupam Mishra, AIR News, Delhi.
Talking to AIR News, MSME Secretary B.B. Swain said it's a proud moment for the Ministry of Micro, Small and Medium Enterprises as the Prime Minister will be announcing the results of MSME India Idea Hackathon 2022, which was launched in March this year.
माननीय प्रधानमंत्री के हाथ में एमएसएमई आइडिया हैकेथन जो हमने शुरू किया था मार्च महीने में, और लगभग 6000 आइडियाज हमें पूरे भारतवर्ष से मिले। उसमें 250 के आसपास सिलेक्ट हुए हैं। एक सिलेक्ट कमेटी, बहुत ही एक्सपर्ट लोगों का कमेटी बनी। वो आइडियाज का भी डिक्लेरेशन आज होने वाला है और प्रधानमंत्री के हाथ से एमएसएमई अवार्ड दिया जाएगा। जो इंडिविजुअल एमएसएमईज हैं, जो स्टेट्स को अवार्ड मिले हैं, जो बैंक्स को अवार्ड मिले हैं और जो एस्पिरेशनल डिस्ट्रिक्ट्स को अवार्ड मिले हैं, उनको भी दिया जाएगा। ये हमारे लिए, हमारे मंत्रालय के लिए बहुत ही गर्व की दिन है।
The Union Cabinet has approved computerization of primary agriculture credit societies, PACS. Briefing media in New Delhi yesterday, Information and Broadcasting Minister Anurag Singh Thakur said the Cabinet Committee on Economic Affairs has decided that 63,000 functional PACS will be computerized with overall budget outlay of 2,516 crore rupees. He said the move will benefit 13 crore farmers.
देश की 63,000 प्राइमरी एग्रीकल्चर क्रेडिट सोसाइटीज को कंप्यूटरीकरण की यानी कि कंप्यूटराइजेशन की मंजूरी दे दी गई है, जिसका उद्देश्य पैक्स की दक्षता बढ़ाना, उनके संचालन में पारदर्शिता और जवाबदेही को लाना और पैक्स को अपने व्यवसाय में विविधता लाने और कई गतिविधियां और सेवाओं को शुरू करने की सुविधा प्रदान करने की सहायता भी मिलेगी। जो खर्च होगा वो लगभग 2,516 करोड़ रुपए खर्च होगा, जिसमें से भारत सरकार 1,528 करोड़ रुपए खर्च करेगी। अगले 5 वर्षों में 63,000 प्राइमरी एग्रीकल्चर क्रेडिट सोसाइटीज को कंप्यूटराइजेशन की प्रक्रिया को पूरा किया जाएगा।
The Cabinet Committee on Economic Affairs also approved the deregulation of sale of domestically produced crude oil. Mr. Thakur said the move will ensure marketing freedom for all exploration and production companies.
With effect from 1st October 2022, this will ensure marketing freedom for all exploration and production operators. The condition in the production sharing contract to sell crude oil to government or its nominee or government companies shall accordingly be waived off. All E&P companies will now be free to sell crude oil from their fields in domestic market. They'll be free to sell it to anyone. Government revenues like royalties, cess, etc. will continue to be calculated on uniform basis across all contracts. As earlier, exports will not be permissible. This decision will further spur economic activities, incentivize making investments in upstream oil and gas sectors.
The government has also approved the categorization of the Coalition for Disaster Resilient Infrastructure CDRI as an international organization and signing of the headquarters agreement with CDRI for granting it the exemptions, immunities and privileges as contemplated under the United Nations Privileges and Immunities Act 1947.
Rajasthan Chief Minister Ashok Gehlot has announced a compensation of 50 lakh rupees for the family of deceased Kanhaiya Lal. A tailor by profession, Kanhaiya Lal was hacked to death by 2 terrorists having links with Pakistani extremist group Dawat-e-Islami in Udaipur on Tuesday. Meanwhile, the National Investigation Agency NIA has taken over the investigation into the horrific incident. Rajasthan DGP ML Lathar said one of the accused, Ghaus Mohammed, went to Karachi in 2014. The last rites of Kanhaiya Lal were performed in Udaipur yesterday. Despite the curfew in the city, a large number of people participated in his funeral. Information and Broadcasting Minister Anurag Singh Thakur termed the Rajasthan government as a mute spectator over incident of brutal murder in Udaipur. Talking to media in New Delhi, Mr. Thakur said all limits of vandalism were crossed in Udaipur and the Gehlot government sat just as a mute spectator.
उदयपुर में जो घटा उसने एक बड़ा प्रश्न चिन्ह खड़ा किया है कि राजस्थान जो एक शांति प्रिय राज्य है, जहां पर दुनिया भर के पर्यटक आते हैं, वहां पर कानून व्यवस्था किस तरह से फेल हुई है, उसका एक बड़ा उदाहरण गहलोत जी की सरकार में दिखता है। 7 दिन पहले एक वीडियो जारी किया गया, उसके बावजूद सरकार ने कोई कदम नहीं उठाए, मूक दर्शक बन के सरकार बैठी रही। ये अपने आप में दिखाता है कि क्या वोट बैंक की राजनीति के चलते कानून व्यवस्था को ठप कर दिया गया, आतंकवाद जैसी घटनाओं को आगे बढ़ने के अवसर दिए गए, एक भय का वातावरण पूरे राजस्थान में पैदा किया गया। आखिरकार कांग्रेस की सीनियर लीडरशिप से लेकर गहलोत सरकार मूक दर्शक बनकर बैठी रही।
Muslim organizations in the country have strongly condemned the incident of brutal murder in Udaipur. General Secretary of the Jamaat Ulama-e-Hind, Maulana Hakimuddin Qasmi, said whoever has perpetrated this incident cannot be justified in any way. It is against the law of the land and Islamic religion. He said, in our country there is a system of law and no one has the right to take law into his own hands. Maulana Qasmi appeals to all the citizens of the country to restrain their emotions and maintain peace in the country. The Shahi Imam of Delhi's Jama Masjid, Sayyid Ahmad Bukhari, has said the brutal incident of murder has shaken humanity. He said it is not only an act of cowardice but also un-Islamic, illegal and inhuman. Mr. Bukhari strongly condemned the incident on behalf of the country's Muslims. Maulana Asghar Ali Imam Mehdi Salafi of Markazi Jamiat Ahdi Ahle Hadith Hind has also condemned and appealed to people to maintain law and order. He also demanded that the government take stringent action against the accused.
The Indian Space Research Organization, Isro, is set to launch the rocket Pslvc 53, carrying 3 Singapore satellites at 6:02 p.m. today. The launch vehicle will lift off from the Satish Dhawan Space Center at Sriharikota. The 25 hours countdown for the mission that began yesterday evening is progressing well. 6 nano-satellites, including those belonging to India's 2 private space startups, will also go to space in today's mission. More details from our correspondent.
The second launch pad in the spaceport at Sriharikota is bustling with activities in preparation of today's launch. Pslvc 53 is the second dedicated commercial mission of the New Space India Limited, a public sector undertaking under the Department of Space. It was formed after the recent space sector reforms. For the workhorse launch vehicle PSLV, this will be the 55th mission. Its primary payloads are the 365 kg Earth Observation Satellite DSEO, a 155 kg NewSAR satellite, and the 2.8 kg Scoop-1 nano satellite of the Nanyang Technological University, all of Singapore. The payloads of Indian startups will not be injected into the orbit, but will continue to stick on to the last stage of the rocket itself and begin giving the data it collects from space. For this purpose, the spent engine will be stabilized in space, as against the normal practice of abandoning it after the launch. Jai Singh, AAR News, Chennai.
India has successfully flight tested the indigenously developed high-speed expendable aerial target Abhyas from the Integrated Test Range ITR in Chandipur off the Odisha coast. The performance of the aircraft at low altitude, including sustained level and high maneuverability, was demonstrated during the test flight. Abhyas is designed and developed by Aeronautical Development Establishment of the Defence Research and Development Organization, DRDO. Defence Minister Rajnath Singh congratulated DRDO and the armed forces for the successful flight trial of Abhyas. He said that the development of the system will meet the requirements of aerial targets. DRDO Chairman G. Satish Reddy lauded the efforts of the teams associated with the design, development and testing of the system.
You're listening to the morning news on All India Radio. A reminder of the headlines before we move on. Udhav Takri resigns as Chief Minister of Maharashtra after Supreme Court refuses to stay today's floor test. Prime Minister Narendra Modi to take part in Udyami Bharat program in New Delhi this morning to launch several schemes to strengthen MSME sector. Isro to launch rocket Pslvc 53 carrying 3 Singapore satellites this evening. India successfully tests high-speed expendable aerial target Abhyas off the Odisha coast. Annual Amarnath Yatra begins from both Pahalgam and Baltal routes in Kashmir Valley amid tight security. UK announces 75 scholarships for Indian students to mark 75th year of India's independence. Indian boxers Simranjeet Kaur and Anant Chopre enter quarter-finals of Florida Cup in Kazakhstan, and in Wimbledon tennis, Andy Murray, Casper Ruud and Emma Raducanu crash out of the tournament. For quick news updates round the clock, follow us on our Twitter handle at AIR News Alerts.
कंपटीशन की अगर आप कर रहे हैं तैयारी तो उनके लिए ऑल इंडिया रेडियो पर हम लाए हैं अभ्यास, एक ऐसा कार्यक्रम जिसमें आप पूछेंगे सवाल व्हाट्सएप नंबर 9289094044 पर या फिर ईमेल करेंगे abhyas.airnews@gmail.com पर और हमारे विशेषज्ञ देंगे इसका जवाब। आपका अभ्यास हमारा प्रयास।
अपने बिजनेस को बढ़ाने के लिए लीजिए आकाशवाणी का सहयोग और दीजिए उसे बुलंदियों के पंख।
आपका बिजनेस लोकल है या राष्ट्रीय, आकाशवाणी देती है उपभोक्ताओं तक पहुंचने का हर विकल्प।
और अब तो आप घर, दफ्तर या दुकान पर बैठे बैठे कर सकते हैं आकाशवाणी के किसी भी केंद्र के लिए विज्ञापनों की बुकिंग।
आकाशवाणी के विभिन्न चैनलों पर विज्ञापन देना सुलभ और सस्ता।
बुकिंग है तो संपर्क करें 8700014242 पर
8700014242।
The annual Amarnath Yatra began this morning from both Pahalgam and Baltal routes in the Kashmir Valley amid tight security.
नमामि आदि शंकरम नमाम्यहम महेश्वरम डमाडमान नमाम्यहम श्री अमरनाथ ईश्वरम हिमानि शिव नमाम्यहम बर्फानि शिव शंकरम। आप क्यों अजर अमर से गूंजे उमा के स्वर निकल पड़े उमा के नाथ बताने वो गुफा अमर है। आप क्यों अजर अमर से गूंजे उमा के स्वर निकल पड़े उमा के नाथ बताने वो गुफा अमर।
The 43-day pilgrimage to the cave shrine of Lord Shiva in the Himalayas will conclude on the 11th of August on the festival of Raksha Bandhan. The authorities are expecting one of the biggest Amarnath Yatras this year as it is taking place after a gap of 2 years. Talking to AIR News, Sri Amarnath Ji Shrine Board CEO Nitishwar Kumar said that pilgrims are being provided improved langar, medical, communication and sanitation facilities this year.
यात्रा में श्राइन बोर्ड ने स्थानीय लोगों के साथ मिलकर बेहतर से बेहतर सुविधा देने की कोशिश की है, वो चाहे रहने की हो, चाहे खाने की हो, चाहे सैनिटेशन की हो। स्थानीय लोग और श्राइन बोर्ड मिलकर हम लोगों ने प्रयास किया है कि एक बेहतर व्यवस्था मिले यात्रियों को और यात्रा में उनको दिव्यता, रोमांच, अध्यात्म महसूस हो। जो स्थानीय लोग हैं उनका बहुत महत्वपूर्ण योगदान होता है। वो यहाँ घोड़े वाले जितने हैं, पोन्नी वाले हैं, पिट्ठू वाले हैं, चाहे दुकान वाले जितने हो या जो लोग टेंट लगाते हैं या जो यहाँ बिस्तर आदि सप्लाई करते हैं, वो सब तन मन धन से यात्रियों का स्वागत कर रहे हैं और जोश और उमंग के साथ श्राइन बोर्ड के साथ मिलकर एक बेहतर से बेहतर व्यवस्था दे रहे हैं।
Mr. Kumar said that the pilgrims are being provided radio frequency identification, that is RFID, to track their movement and well-being. In Manipur, a river flowing through Tamenglong and Noni districts has completely got blocked due to massive landslide. The AZ River, originating from Senapati district, has blocked near Noni Bazar, around 50 kilometers from Imphal towards Imphal-Jiribam road due to massive landslide last night. Some people are also feared to be trapped under the debris. Danger of flash floods is also looming large in the nearby villages.
In celebration of India's 75th anniversary of independence, the UK government has partnered with leading businesses in India to offer 75 fully funded scholarships for Indian students to study in Britain from September. In a statement, the British High Commission said this is the highest number of fully funded scholarships given for the one-year master's program to date. The High Commission said companies like HSBC, Pearson India, Hindustan Unilever, Tata Sons and Duolingo are supporting this special initiative to celebrate India's 75th year of independence. NATO leaders have termed Russia as the most significant and direct threat to the security of the alliance member states. The final declaration, released after the Madrid summit, said Russia poses the most significant and direct threat to peace and stability in the Euro-Atlantic area. The declaration also included NATO's formal invitation to Sweden and Finland to join the grouping. NATO also issued a warning about China, accusing it of bullying its neighbors and forming a strategic partnership with Moscow that poses a challenge to the West.
And now let's listen to our special program, Azadi Ka Safar, highlighting the importance of the day during the freedom struggle.
आजादी का अमृत महोत्सव।
Azadi Ka Safar with AIR News, Birth of a Nation.
India's glorious freedom struggle is one of the greatest struggles the modern world has ever witnessed. AIR News brings you a glimpse of the struggle every day.
On the 30th of June 1855, the Santhal uprising began. The indigenous tribe of Santhals from the then Bengal Presidency rose up against the British East India Company and the Zamindari system. The Santhal Hool, which started 2 years before the 1857 revolt, continued till November the 10th, 1855, when martial law was declared.
Santhals fought against the unjust revenue system of permanent settlement that exploited the community, surviving on forest products and the barter system. According to the Permanent Settlement Act of 1793 by Lord Cornwallis, landlords would have perpetual and hereditary rights over the lands demarcated under their jurisdiction until and unless they were able to pay the required land revenue.
Thus, to create this new class of zamindars, the British confiscated lands from the Santhals and other tribes. The Santhals had to serve these landlords who would take away a large chunk of their agricultural produce, leaving them with almost nothing. To sustain themselves, they borrowed from the moneylenders, who would lend at exorbitant rates to an already vulnerable and impoverished group.
Santhals were forced into bonded labor and, generation after generation, cultivated land to meet the demands of the British. Many had to work in indigo plantations or for the railway constructions that the British initiated.
Four brothers of the Murmu clan, Siddhu, Kanhu, Chand and Bhairav, along with their sisters Polo and Jhanu, led the uprising against the blatant exploitations of the Santhals. They organized thousands of Santhals from neighboring areas after declaring that freedom can only be won by armed war.
As the uprising gained power, the company administration sent more troops to fight Santhals, who in turn fought using their traditional weapons. The British put a prize money of 10,000 rupees for Siddhu and Kanhu, the prominent leaders of the uprising.
Santhals lost thousands of their kin and tens of villagers as the war elephants destroyed their homes. The colonizers managed to suppress the uprising, and Siddhu and Kanhu were killed in action. However, the sacrifices of the Santhals were not in vain. The uprising concluded with the issuing of the Santhal Parganas Tenancy Act, which provided the people some protection from colonial exploitation. Regular police force was abolished, and the village head was put in charge of maintaining peace.
On the 30th of June 1857, the Battle of Chinhat was fought between British forces and Indian independence activists during the First War of Indian Independence at Ismailganj near Chinhat, Awadh. The British were led by the Chief Commissioner of Awadh, Henry Lawrence, and the Indian activists were led by Barkat Ahmed, an ex-officer of the British Army. The Battle of Chinhat was one of the few major victories which Indian forces obtained in open combat with the British during the uprising.
The British force was greatly outnumbered by the Indian Independence Army by about 6,000 to 600. The Indians were in well-prepared positions behind stone walls in the village and inflicted heavy casualties on the British forces. The regiment's acting commanding officer, Lieutenant Colonel William Case, was killed, as were several officers. Many of the British soldiers, especially Indian artillery men, also joined the Indian forces, overturning their guns and cutting the traces on the horses. The British were forced to retreat to the British residency at Lucknow.
That brings us to the end of this episode of Azadi Ka Safar with AIR News. See you in the next episode tomorrow.
And now sports news. Indian boxers Simranjeet Kaur and Anant Chopre registered contrasting victories on the opening day of Lorida Cup at Nur Sultan in Kazakhstan yesterday to progress to the quarter-finals. The 2018 World Championships bronze medalist Simranjeet pulled off a comprehensive win against local boxer Eschanova Nazim by unanimous decision in the women's 60 kg bout. Anant beat Mongolian pugilist Dorjyambu Ganbold in men's 54 kg category by 3-2. In Wimbledon tennis, top seed Novak Djokovic of Serbia advanced into the third round after defeating Australian Thanasi Kokkinakis in men's singles. 9th seed Cameron Norrie and 10th seed Jannik Sinner have also entered the third round. However, 3rd seed Casper Ruud and 3-time Grand Slam champion Andy Murray were knocked out of the tournament. In women's singles, 3rd seed Ons Jabeur and 5th seed Maria Sakkari advanced to the third round of the tournament. However, 2nd seed Annette Kontaveit, 9th seed Spaniard Gabin Muguruza and Britain's 10th seed Emma Raducuna made early exit from the grass court Grand Slam event.
And now let's take a look at the weather forecast for today. The national capital Delhi will have generally cloudy sky with moderate rain. Mumbai will have generally cloudy sky with heavy rain. Chennai will have thunderstorm with rain. Kolkata will have partly cloudy sky with 1 or 2 spells of rain or thunder showers. Leh and Gilgit will have mainly clear sky. Muzaffarabad will have partly cloudy sky with 1 or 2 spells of rain or thunder showers. Guwahati and Imphal will have generally cloudy sky with 1 or 2 spells of rain. Gangtok, Agartala and Kohima will have generally cloudy sky with some rain.
And now an overview of today's newspapers. Udhav quits as Chief Minister after SC allows floor test to go ahead is the Hindustan Times headline. The Pioneer reports that now a portal has been launched by Delhi LG where residents can directly connect with the 57,000 Swachhta or Safai Sainiks and 5,000 Malis in capital. One can log on to mcdonline.nic.in. The Himachal government is considering the inclusion of apple in midday meals in schools and Anganwaris and for patients in hospitals, as there is likelihood of a higher yield this time, is a front page story in the Tribune. The Asian Age carries a picture of police personnel with Amarnath pilgrims at Pahalgam titled Amarnath Yatra from today after 2-year gap. And finally, the Financial Express quotes a survey saying Mumbai is the costliest city in India, followed by Delhi.
And now the headlines again. Udhav Takri resigns as Chief Minister of Maharashtra after Supreme Court refuses to stay today's floor test. Prime Minister Narendra Modi to take part in Udyami Bharat program in New Delhi this morning to launch several schemes to strengthen MSME sector. Isro to launch rocket PSLV C-53 carrying 3 Singapore satellites this evening. India successfully tests high-speed expendable aerial target Abhyas off the Odisha coast. Annual Amarnath Yatra begins from both Pahalgam and Baltal routes in the Kashmir Valley amid tight security. UK announces 75 scholarships for Indian students to mark the 75th year of India's independence. Indian boxers Simranjeet Kaur and Anant Chopre enter quarterfinals of Lorida Cup in Kazakhstan. And in Wimbledon tennis, Andy Murray, Casper Ruud and Emma Raducanu crash out of the tournament. And with that, we end the morning news. Have a nice day.